Hey there, everyone. We are back today with a much anticipated impressions video, and today we are going to be talking about this game right here, Persona 5. And Persona 5, got a lot of stuff to say about Persona 5. I took a little bit of notes, but I didn't take a huge amount of notes like I did for the SMT4 video, so it probably won't be an hour and a half, maybe. But I've got a few notes. I've got my Paradigm X T-shirt on. It's a special occasion. It's like one of the few gaming shirts I have. We're ready to go here. So Persona 5. A lot of stuff to say about Persona 5. First, if you're just here to wonder, like, you don't want to hear anything about the game, you just want to know, is it good or is it bad? Well, it's good. It's good. Good stuff. So, feel free to pre-order and buy the game when it comes out in English. Or if you can't wait and you can read Japanese, play it in Japanese. Yeah, I'd recommend it. So that's it for you people who don't want to hear any type of stuff. There's not going to be any spoilers in the video. I'll try not to spoil anything. I'll make sure I don't spoil anything. But there will be, I'll talk about the systems with the art style, some other stuff in the game. You'll get to hear about a bunch of that stuff, but there won't be any spoilers, so if you're worried, don't worry. So yeah, let's talk about Persona 5. So, Persona 5, first, I just want to talk about the things that you notice about it first are how it looks. It looks really good. Incredibly good. So, if you played Catherine, the models for the character models and the way they move are very similar. So there's a character in the game who is like the first character you meet. His name is Ryuji. He he walks like Vincent does a lot. Like maybe the main character kind of does too. Like if you've ever played Catherine, like Vincent like walks with his hands in his pockets and he's a little hunched over. Like, that guy tends to walk that way, and sometimes the main character does too. So, you'll look at the animations for the characters and you'll feel like, oh, this is familiar, and it kind of is, and that makes sense because Atlas did say they made Catherine as like a kind of proof of concept for their HD games for something like a Persona. So it makes sense that the characters actually kind of have similar movements and animations in the way they look. The art style is very similar. So it actually kind of works out in a way that it looks great. It looks kind of cell shaded. It's very smooth, and everything is very like stylish and in really nice ways. But what you want to think about with Persona here is that it's not just stylish in like a very broad sense. It is, but it's not just that, because they do a lot of things that are really good. Nice kind of subtle scene transitions. There's loading between areas and things, and it's loading. But they do these things where they make the loading part of this kind of stylistic animation switch where it's kind of contextual. So when you're in a certain situation, you'll get a different loading screen that's related. So it actually kind of feels like it's part of the game instead of part of like a loading screen. And they're usually pretty short. It's pretty snappy. So it's not like there's a huge amount of loading, at least time-wise. But you go, for example, I'll give you some examples of this. If you ride a train, there'll be a kind of animation. The transition will be this kind of crowded train kind of silhouettes thing that goes by, and there'll be train noises. And sometimes you'll be like transitioning between towns, and you'll be like, not towns, but like areas in town, I guess. Well, I guess it's kind of towns. It's Tokyo. But whatever. If you're transitioning between walking between areas, there'll be transitions where like people walk by, and depending on the place you are, the amount of people that are walking by, like depending on the time of day, the amount of people that are walking by in the loading screen are different. It's really well thought out. it's been a long time since I've played a game where I thought like they did all these subtle little things in the gameplay that made it feel like they put a lot of effort into making the systems work, like how everything fits together and how the kind of art style of it all works. They did so much work to make it kind of flow together seamlessly, and it really kind of pays off. And like I want to say, like the last game that I thought of when I played it, where I was just like, this is so great for all the kind of subtle things that are in here, was actually Grand Theft Auto 5. And for it to be on the kind of, or to me to get that same kind of feeling that like GTA 5 had when I played that, and I thought like they had thought of so much stuff, so many subtle little things that people are not going to notice, but when you do, it's great. And Persona 5 has that, and I thought, this is a triumph. It's so much better than any of the ways that the towns and things, the areas you walked around in, were for the previous Persona games. That like it ends up being like easily the best looking Persona game, but also the the one that's kind of the most well thought out. It's really good. It's just it's so nice. Like, and this is just like the kind of basic interface is also um, very well put together. Your the menus are kind of easy to get through. They're given to you in a way that's like you're kind of worked into them slowly, so you can't use everything right away. And the menus will get bigger, but since you get used to it, like there's a ton of menus by the end, but you're so used to it because you've been kind of eased in that it doesn't really work as a tutorial so much as it works as a kind of, you know, lessening that kind of steep learning curve that you would have otherwise. And in some other games, not necessarily Persona games, but some of the other SMT games have like this ridiculous learning curve if you've never played one before. Um, uh, the first Devil Summoner is always the one I always think of. Not the, it didn't come out in English, but it was on the Sega Saturn, and man, that one it has like a ridiculous learning curve. Like if you'd never played an SMT game and you bought that game, you would just be like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And actually, consider I'm wearing the Paradigm X T-shirt. It's when they made this game, it was like actually part of, the Devil Summoner, the sequel. And that one at the time was kind of like the dumbed down version, but it actually turns out to be a better game. But Persona 5, not to say that Persona 5 is like a dumbed down version, because it's not. It's actually just, if you can take what you'd think of as for 4 and just make it better in basically every way possible, you'll have Persona 5. So I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Trying to keep it all in the same category here, but I guess I'm talking about visuals. So let's talk more about how the game looks. Um, Beyond the kind of menu things and transitions that I've been talking about, there's a bunch of city areas. Because you're in Tokyo, you move all around the city. There's a ton of different areas you can go to. There's a few main areas that you're often going to where people are hanging out and there's shops and things, and you'll always be going to those places. But beyond that, there's lots of smaller places that are kind of one-stop places. And if you know Tokyo, you know these places. They're kind of famous for the things that you go there for. So there's lots of places where like, oh, well, I need some old used books. I have to go to Jimbocho. Or, I'm going to go to this temple, so I'm going to have to go to Harajuku. This kind of thing. There's like that kind of, it's actually it's Meiji Jingu-mai, which is essentially Harajuku. It's the same station, basically, but in the game it's slightly off, and it is slightly off in real life too, so it kind of makes sense. But it's kind of things like that where there's a lot of small areas that have just the one spot, and then there's like 3, 4 major areas that unlock in the game. So you have like your standard home station, which is not a real station. Yonjengaya is what it is in the game. It's in real life, it's Sangenjaya, sorry. um, it, um, And then you have like your standard big areas. So you have Shibuya, Shinjuku, and Akihabara that you can actually walk around in. And then all the various other little places. But this kind of thing, when you go to these places in the game, they're pretty similar to the way they look in real life. So I actually live by these. I live pretty close to all of those places. It's right. So where the where the kind of protagonist of this game lives is not that far from my station actually. So like when you're taking the train line in this game, it's the same train line I take when I go to places like Shibuya. It's like I'm on the same train line as the station in the game. So they're all pretty familiar places to me. So when I see them in the game, I think, oh yeah, this is pretty familiar. And if you've ever been to Shibuya, sorry, if you've ever, man, I'm gonna need a drink. I think I have nothing nearby. That's no bad. That's no good. But if you've ever been to Shibuya or you've seen pictures of it, you'll recognize the areas pretty well in the game. And they're all like slightly different. Obviously, the SMT world is not the real world because there's things that are slightly off. But, I mean, beyond the whole Personas thing. But, like some major landmarks are there, but they have slightly different names. And some of the stations have slightly different names or the same name with the slightly different kanji or something like that. It works out in a way that the game is not exactly the real world. But the general positions of things are the same, so it's really recognizable to someone who's, if you've been there in real life. So it's pretty interesting. You get a nice kind of sense that they took a lot of effort to kind of recreate real life places for people playing the game. And when they showed the first Persona trailer, which is the only thing I watched for Persona 5 actually, they showed the protagonist walking through Shibuya Station. I thought like, oh, it's actually like that in real life. And I took pictures on my Facebook and posted them a while back of like, oh, here's that scene from the trailer because I walk through there all the time. So I was like, oh, I can just take a picture next time and show everybody like, hey, this is actually the part from the game. So that's pretty cool. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the character models beyond the characters in the game. So like beyond the characters, there's a whole bunch of different things in the game that have character models, obviously. There's the enemies, the bosses, the kind of supplementary characters that you have, obviously the Velvet Room people. Even like the normal people on the street. They all have, a kind of style to them. So obviously the main characters all have like kind of a brightly colored style. It's not extremely bright, but they all stand out. They're all way more stylish than everybody else around them. So like when it's the kind of a Persona thing where you can always tell who's going to be part of your party at some point because they're totally more fashionable than everybody else in the game, and they totally stand out. So even if like at any point in the game when you see somebody who like stands out, you can kind of imagine this is like for every Persona game, not specifically 5. Like when there's somebody in the game who stands out, even if you haven't talked to them in the game, they just stand out. They're going to be something in the game. They're going to be either a social link or they're going to be a party member. It's it's that kind of thing, and it stays true in this game as well. But like I wanted to talk about the enemies in this because it is actually quite different from previous Persona games, which the enemies tended to be like shapes. I mean, for the past, like for 3 and 4 at least, they're like blobs and things that you hit, and then they turn into various things. Like, and I say things because it's not like they're specific. Like there's a glove for one, but like all the other ones are just like things. But in this game, they're not. It's actually brings back a few things that were in previous Persona games, especially if you remember, if anyone played Persona 2, there's a lot of kind of elements from Persona 2 that they brought back and put into 5 that weren't in 3 or 4. For example, all the personas, all the monsters that you fight are actually demons. So they're personas themselves instead of like random stuff that gives you random cards to make persona. It's not it's not like that anymore. You actually have the when you hit the random enemies in the stage, they kind of melt away in this kind of cool little melting animation, and they turn into demons from like SMT demons. And you'll find that those demons are really well designed. And I think, like, I say well designed because if you can imagine like the kind of iconic 2D drawing style of SMT, they did a really, really good job of converting them to 3D models and putting them in this game with kind of a cel shaded look to make them look very similar to the way they do in the 2D drawings, more so than any previous game that has had the 3D demons. They did a really good job in making them look like the 2D ones. So you don't particularly feel like they've gone off the rails here with the styles. They've actually done a pretty good job of keeping it consistent, more so than other recent games. Like if you've played SMT4, they had new demon designs done by other artists, and they stand out a lot. So they really stand out as different because the art styles are crazy different. So, but in this game, they've done a real good job, even for newer things, of unifying the kind of art style to make it very consistent. And I think that speaks kind of well of the way that the game is designed. They put a lot of effort into making it very stylish, but also incredibly unified, so that nothing stands out as out of place, even though, there's lots of weird shit. What else? Besides the demon models, the demons do things. There's things in the game. Like I'm saying, there's systems here. I should just switch off that and get back into the kind of systems of the game. So you've got game systems. You've got your kind of standard battle system. It's the same as a kind of Persona 4. So you can actually switch on, like Persona 3 Portable. You can switch on and off. You could switch on and off the character control. So you don't have you don't have to control all the characters. You can give them like things you want them to do and let the computer control them, or you can just control everybody. I don't know why you'd want the computer to control your other characters, but you can do it. It's an option. I don't know who does it, but default is controlling all the characters yourself, and I'd suggest you do that. But there's the option. But the battle system, though, it's your standard kind of Persona thing going on. So you have, various, I want to say, attack methods, and some characters and some enemies are weak to certain attacks. So you'll be able to knock them down. And if you can knock down all the enemies in the air, well, if you hit somebody's weak point or you get a critical, you get an extra attack. But if you can knock down all the enemies all at the same time, you'll be able to do an all-out attack. But unlike the other system, it's different. This is not exactly the same system, because in this game, you don't get an all-out attack only. You get options here now. Because the demons are demons and they aren't just random things, demon conversations are back. Persona 2 had a ton of demon conversation stuff. You had to do that all the time, or like you couldn't do things in the game. Like there was a lot of side quests in that game that required you to required you to talk to demons and get certain information from them when they showed up in the dungeon. And this game brings that back, where you have to talk to the demons and get them to join you. So if you want new personas, besides fusing, you're going to have to negotiate with demons. And some people don't might not like that, but it's kind of streamlined. So the way that the negotiations work, it's not going to be this kind of like weird long process. And I know that in SMT4, people were complaining that like, oh, I'd give them like a ton of stuff and then they'd run away and I would lose all my stuff and not get the demon. And that was, again, Persona SMT4 was kind of broken in that way, in that like there were demons who would keep requesting stuff over and over again. If you kept giving it to them, they'd just run away. But in that game, if you give them two things, ever, like in any of the conversations, if you can get them to accept two things from you, you can just tell them to stop asking for stuff and they'll be like, oh, I guess I asked for enough stuff, I'll join. But if you keep giving it to them, they'll just run away. I don't think a lot of people knew that, because I've heard a lot of people complaining. But in this game, it's always only two. It's only two questions. They never ask for anything. That is put into an entirely new thing that's in the game. But in this case, when you have to talk to the demons, you have to answer two questions, essentially. And when you answer the two questions, if you answer them good, you get a good reaction, the demon will join you. If you get bad reactions, the demon will attack you. And if you get like kind of a one-in-one kind of thing, usually the demon will give you an item and then run away. So you've got, this kind of thing. It's really streamlined. It's simple. And it's not going to take a long time. There's not going to be any like ridiculous negotiations. You don't have to worry about that. It's pretty easy. Either you'll get it or you won't. But you can only talk to the demons if you knock weak points and knock them down. So hitting the weak points beyond getting full all out attacks to get kill your enemies. It's also good to do that to get the conversations. But the conversation is not the only thing you can do with the full all-out attack. You can do a kind of the only thing I'm thinking of here is the Japanese, and what I'm thinking is you're kind of like mugging the enemies. So like essentially the full out attack is called a hold up. So you basically, everybody whips out guns and like holds up the enemies that are on the ground, and you can talk to them, or you can demand they give you items or money. And it's actually like a really, really good system, because if you can knock all the enemies down and you have all of them, like you've got these personas, you can't do anything with these guys. Like there's no reason to talk to them. All you can do is like kill them and get experience like you would have anyway, or you can demand that they give you money or items. And sometimes, like, depending on your skills that you get later in the game, well, I guess depending on your social links, you'll be able to keep asking them for money over and over. So eventually they'll get mad and attack you. But like, there are points in the game where you can like get the demons to like give you money like 4 or 5 times, and like it adds up really quickly. So you can, which is good, because a lot of the stuff in the game is pretty expensive. But there's strategy with it too. So, if you have a group of, 3 enemies, you kill 2 and then knock 1 down, it's more beneficial to you to ask them for money than it is to kill them, because you'll get money for killing them, but you'll always get more for asking them for like holding them up for money. And then not only that, if you hold them up and they give you money, sometimes you can just kill them anyway and get double money, or they'll leave and you still get the experience for killing them even though you didn't kill them. So it works out in a way that like it's always more beneficial for you to ask for money than if you have a single enemy than it is to just kill them straight out. It's a pretty good system. And it's same for items too. And depending on your skills, depending on what you have, you can get better items or more money, or you can get auto persona. So, which means like you can get them to join you without having to answer any questions, which is, very helpful for some demons who are especially cranky. There's lots of things beyond that in the system, beyond that system. So there's this hold up system where if you knock down an enemy, all the enemies, you can do this. But in this game, they do something nice. The enemies can do it to you. So sometimes the enemies can hit your character's weak spots, and if they do that, sometimes they'll hold up your character. They'll come over and stand over the fallen character, and they'll just be like, okay, if you don't give me, this item or this much money, I'm going to kill this character. And you can, you'll be like, oh, well, this is where, like, you have to give the demons items for help. Instead of, like, in the negotiation process, it's like, don't kill my character, please, and I'll give you some items. So they'll show up and they'll be like, I want, like, this many healing potions, give it to me now, or this person dies. And if you don't give it to them, they one-shot kill your character. He's just dead. So, like, you'll have to, you have to resurrect or whatever. But if you give it to them, sometimes they'll ask for more, and sometimes they'll be okay. And but if you keep giving it to them, I think like the max I think would be 2. It might be 3 actually. But once you give it to them, they'll be like, oh, okay, I'll leave that person alone, and they won't kill your character. They'll still be knocked down, but the demon will lose their extra attack, and they'll instead accept your items, which is, it's a pretty cool system. It's new. There hasn't been any other games with that kind of system, not in Persona at least. And it adds like a new layer to the battle system because, like, if you get hit with something, you're like, oh damn, I got hit with that, and then like suddenly, you might be extra screwed because the demon is going to show up and be like, I want your best item, and you're going to be like, well, what do I do now? Because I don't want to give you this item, but I also don't want my character to die because I'm kind of in a pinch here. It adds like a little bit of extra layer to the kind of strategy of the game. I'm trying to think of what else about this kind of system. There's a ton of systems in this game, not just the battle system. That's mainly the battle system is how things are. There are a few new things to the battle system as well because instead of your standard. Now, I can't remember which SMT game took away the difference between slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning weapons. I don't remember which game it was where it was taken out. But in this game, it's not here either. But there are new elements in the game that are different. It weren't in previous games. So instead of having like your 3 different types of physical attacks, like piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing, you have just physical, and then you have guns. So you have physical and guns. Everybody has a gun, special type of gun that they use. You have limited amount of bullets. So if you're in a dungeon for a night and you use all your bullets, you can't get any more. You have to wait till the next day. You have to leave the dungeon and come back to replenish them, except for the final dungeon. But and then you have this kind of, your standard, wind, electricity, fire, ice, those 4. And then you have light, dark. But in this one, you have 2 extra ones. I can't remember, actually. I can't remember what the one of them is. There's one is kind of like nuclear. Maybe it's like, it might be nuclear. Trying to remember what they are. There are 2 new ones, and I'm like thinking of it, but I'm thinking of them only by their color because that's how I was playing the game. When you're trying to hit enemies with it, like it's color coded, so it's much easier to just remember the color and not have to worry about looking at the title of it. So you can, I don't remember, but there's like kind of a light blue one and a pink one, which are new. They're not previously there. So instead of like dumbing it down with, let's just take out these extra elements, they took out two specific vulnerabilities that were in previous games and changed them to 2 entirely new things, which is cool because it gives you a lot of, it gives you a whole like range of new kind of magic spells to work with, and it gives you, some kind of interesting strategies going on with these, because now you have different types of demons and different types of things that will do different types of attacks based on these new kind of vulnerabilities, I guess. So this works. It's a pretty good thing. I'm trying to think of, There must be other systems that I wanted to talk about. Oh, there's definitely. I haven't even started with the Personas and the Persona fusions. Okay, we're half hour into this, and I think my phone is going to run out of space. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop this. This will be part one, and I'll continue in part two, which I'll probably upload at the same time. So it's not like you're going to have to wait for part two. It'll be up. I'm just going to delete some, make some space on my phone so I can continue, and I'm going to get a drink so I stop coughing, and I'll be back in part two. So see you in part two.